Imagine you were standing in the grocery store, looking at two packages of ground beef. They cost the exact same. They weigh the exact same. The only difference is the label. One says 80% lean, and the other says 20% fat. Mathematically, these two products are entirely identical. Yet given the choice, the vast majority of consumers will pick the package labeled 80% lean. We actively prefer it. By simply highlighting a positive attribute and hiding the negative counterpart, the label shifts our entire perception of the product's quality. This is a psychological principle known as the framing effect. Pioneered by researchers like Kahneman, the theory proves that human choices are dictated by how information is presented, rather than the actual objective substance of the information itself. There is a very specific biological reason for this vulnerability. As a species, we are what psychologists call cognitive misers. The brain consumes an enormous amount of energy, so to conserve fuel, it relies on fast, automatic mental shortcuts. It avoids doing the heavy lifting of raw math whenever possible. Human decision-making is inherently irrational because our biology prioritizes easy, emotional packaging over objective facts. Marketing tricks in the meat aisle are relatively harmless. The stakes rise when politicians, lobbyists, and social media algorithms engineer this exact cognitive glitch to influence public behavior. To understand how that works, we have to look at a second psychological filter called ideological selectivity. This is the brain's tendency to prejudge all incoming information based strictly on our political, cultural, or social identities. We need to examine what happens when the external manipulation of the framing effect collides with the internal bias of our ideological selectivity. When these forces merge, the framing effect operates as a mechanism for group-level persuasion. It creates an environment where the way a policy is described can matter more than the actual outcome of the policy itself. A linguistic frame works by putting a spotlight on a tiny, carefully curated subset of considerations, while intentionally hiding the broader context in the shadows. Take the estate tax. For years, it was debated under that name. Then, political strategists rebranded it as the death tax. Changing that single word altered the entire perceived morality of the policy. An estate sounds like wealth. Death sounds like a universal tragedy. Similarly, consider the term tax relief. The moment you hear the word relief, your brain automatically writes a subconscious script. If there is relief, there must be a victim experiencing a burden. There must be an oppressor causing the burden. And whoever removes the burden becomes the savior. This relies on something called the affect heuristic. These carefully chosen trigger words force an immediate emotional reaction. That rush of feeling effectively short-circuits the analytical processing centers in your frontal lobe. A successful frame functions as a cognitive weapon. It provides your brain with a satisfying emotional conclusion before your analytical mind even has a chance to turn on. This reaction becomes explosive when a highly framed message gets explicitly endorsed by your own political party or social group. This chart tracks voter behavior. When a frame aligns with in-group identity, logical evaluation plummets, while partisan adherence skyrockets. Endorsement sends the framing effect into overdrive. People aggressively defend frames confirming their worldview, while instantly rejecting identical opposition options. The math no longer matters. Ideological selectivity and the framing effect create a closed-loop neurological system. It renders the mind resistant to outside facts, which are discarded before they can be analyzed. This hybrid mindset results in mass irrationality. Citizens will enthusiastically vote against their own survival, simply because a policy was packaged to trigger their ideological loyalty. It also creates extreme polarization and the loss of a shared reality. You can see the ultimate gridlock in the debate over climate change. The issue is often presented through competing frames, a moral apocalypse or economic suicide. Because the packaging is entirely emotional, objective problem-solving becomes almost impossible. When we process information this way, the public becomes a programmable asset for any bad actor who discovers their linguistic trigger words. This combined mindset renders us incapable of solving basic existential threats because we cannot agree on the basic data. There is an antidote to this paralysis. It requires a cognitive strategy called systematic information processing. It means putting in the conscious effort to manually override our natural, lazy heuristics. The core of this strategy relies on a concept called extensionality. It is the strict logical requirement that we judge a policy, an object, or idea solely by its objective external properties, not by the words describing it. Before reacting to a charged headline, you must strip away the adjectives. You must ignore who is speaking and isolate the raw math beneath. Forcing your brain to do the math acts as a circuit breaker. It switches off the emotional affect heuristic, forcing your analytical processor to reboot. It requires energy and it requires discipline. But if we refuse to put in the effort to dismantle the frames we are handed, there is a massive industry of politicians, advertisers, and algorithms perfectly willing to make our choices for us.